Practically zero here, Michael.
Welcome to the Liberty Collaborative, where the past meets the present in the fight for freedom. We uncover the roots of liberty, spotlight the people who shaped it, and explore what it takes to preserve it today. If you're ready to think deeper, stand stronger, and act with purpose, you're in the right place. Let's reclaim what matters most.
And welcome to the Liberty Collaborative Podcast. My name is Aaron Bowman. I'm one of the hosts here with Chris Coyle and Mike Hancock. We are missing K. Carl Smith today. He's got some things going on that he couldn't make it. So you just have the three of us, which I think is pretty good on this 29th day of January where it's like 4 degrees outside. So, gentlemen.
Yeah, K. Carl's suffering down there in Alabama from what? In the 40s.
Okay.
No, it's cold down. I don't know how far this goes, but it was down touching North Florida this last front.
It was brutal. It's like you go outside and everything just freezes. Like it's rough, the weather. And now,
well, speaking of freezing, it's certainly not cooling things down in Minnesota. What do we have today, Aaron?
So
What's
today
our
we're
title?
Talking about Minnesota and the false narrative, how media framing distorts the rule of law. And yeah, I don't know how these people are still out there protesting. It's like, negative 15 degrees and they've got the water cannons out. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
They must be being paid very well.
Very well.
Well, it's, Michael and I were chatting, Aaron. It's an opportunity to unpack a situation, and what we promise on the Liberty Collaborative, that we will give more content than you would hear on the media, more context and historical perspective, because this idea that one side is always wrong and the other side's always right, that is, my side is always right, is really, this is a great, I think, Michael, example of where there's mistakes being made and games being played on both sides that hurt normal people.
Oh, yeah.
So, Michael, you want to jump into this thing? Because which end do we start with?
Well, one of the things that I have been observing, and I'm sure you guys have too, is just as you watch the various different newscasts, especially those that we might consider to be progressive, you keep hearing these false narratives, right? One of which is that I've heard is, ICE shot a guy who was carrying a gun legally, right? Or he's a nurse. They shot a nurse, and they totally leave out the fact that the guy, actually 11 days before he got shot, was kicking in the ICE cars and spitting on them, right? And they had to shut him down. And then he shows up at 11 days later, and now he's got the gun again. And they knew he had the gun then. He shows up, but one of the things when you're carrying legally is that, in the face of law enforcement, you're supposed to identify yourself, raise your hands, and say, "Hey, I've got a gun." He did neither.
Oh my God!
Yeah, he did neither of those. And when you look at the video, you see he's actually attacking a border patrol person. So it's crazy. But no, he's a nurse.
So Aaron, being former law enforcement and myself being a lawyer and really a lover of the rule of law, which in essence, the unique thing about our United States, our Constitution, our laws, is that we are a nation of laws. We're a nation of immigrants who celebrate being American because we have this structure. So let's unpack a couple things, Michael, if I might, just in terms of all viewers. Folks, it doesn't matter which side you align with or agree with. Here are a couple fundamental facts, and Michael started to touch on them. First of all, there are federal laws. Let me repeat that. Federal laws that it is a felony if you violate them, that includes conspiring to interfere with federal officers and interfering with federal officers. So all the websites and the apps and the things these people are doing and the funding there too is potentially, likely, criminally indictable federal felonies. It's just the truth, folks.
Yep.
That said, okay, when one exercises their Second Amendment, and everyone on this podcast feels very strongly about the second, all our other rights, one has to exercise a heightened duty of care. One of the duties of care in civil law is you can't be the instigator, the agitator. You have to avoid confrontations. And in law enforcement, anyone who knows when you engage in the confrontation and a gun is exposed, you better do absolutely everything in your life, including hands on your head, standing still and going, big mistake. But to enter engagement and assault, again, under state law, assault and battery, both elements are there. Assault is the threatening, the battery is the actual touching. With a firearm on your person, folks, he's lost any kind of claim he might have or have had he been alive. So legally, these arguments that they killed him, that they assassinated him, these people are putting themselves in harm's way potentially. Now, in a minute, we'll get to what's now unfolding, where the Minneapolis Police Union, I saw St. Paul, are finally speaking up, saying these crowds shouldn't be allowed near the federal law enforcement. But let's start there, guys. What this officer did and what this, quote, nurse did is, unfortunately, is provided for in our criminal code and our civil code.
Well, and the other thing, Chris, I think that we see is that within the hour of this event occurring, what you had was from the governor as well as the mayor of that city, them pushing forward this false narrative that ICE is a Gestapo and that they need to get out of the community.
That they're inciting.
That they're inciting and stuff, when the exact opposite is happening. These people, some of whom I absolutely believe are paid, are harassing and interfering with the law enforcement doing their jobs.
But Aaron, you know, people's head will explode. My friends who support Trump, of course, when I give the following criticism, but what was Noam thinking when they come out with these statements before all the facts are out,
right,
that he was a terrorist, he aimed to kill a bunch of people, as many as possible? I mean, these are brandishing a firearm, which he wasn't. They're statements, including losing a grasp of the overall mission, which is not to incite riots, but to arrest a few people. What are these people thinking? They literally lost control of the narrative.
Yeah, they have. And I don't think from a former law enforcement military aspect, you should be coming out and giving any statements just that, hey, an incident happened, we're investigating, we'll brief you when we know more. There is no need to come out and start the rhetoric that they came out with. And that's one thing where, you know, here on this podcast, we call out both sides, whether if you're right or wrong, we call you out. And there is a lot that didn't come out yet. There's still some that's going to come out after the investigation is done, body cameras, there's different cameras from different angles. But again, this guy, he has his right to carry his firearm. He's legally and lawfully allowed to carry it. He has all his permits and stuff. And as somebody that really appreciates the Second Amendment, I don't have a problem with that. And I know some people are going to have issues with that. My problem is, as a responsible gun owner, you show up to riots, bring a firearm. Like, I've gone to protests at the Capitol. I don't show up. We used to have open carry here in the state, and I'd see some people walking around with open carry, and I'm like, well, why? It's like, you got something to prove? I don't understand what his thought pattern was. Well, no different than good to hit the gas in the car as opposed to get up and put your hands up. Okay, you're going to get arrested. You were just in a confrontation 11 days prior, and that's not being really talked about anywhere. Not that that has a big standing in all this, but it does set the tone for how this individual was acting. He wasn't rational by any means.
Yeah, no. They might do a toxology report, Michael, and find he was on drugs.
Something.
We don't know, but guys, it just strikes me that I saw an email that recounted historical text of it wasn't Saul Lewinsky, but it was historical text, I think, about the Russian Revolution, but essentially laid out the tactics being used. And that is, you do everything you can to press the police to overreact, right? So you get in their face, you quote, de-arrest them. And as soon as they overreact, you use that to turn the public against them. This writer pointed out that's exactly what they're doing. These are coordinated, funded protests by a lot of outside people that came there, right?
Yep.
And it looks like the Trump administration fell into the trap. And what I wonder, guys, I'm going to throw this out, is so you see Noam and they see Rubio over at Davos, they see Lutnick, they see all these guys speaking out, talking, they see Venezuela action, and now it's their turn in the camera. So you almost feel like this guy Noam had in charge there was strutting around out of his Suburban with his vest on. It was almost like a show of force, Aaron. You don't do that, law enforcement. You're quiet, you're respectful, you're humble. So I think their ego got in the way, and thank God Trump went time out, get the stage right. But what were they thinking?
Here's the guy was a border patrol guy. He wasn't an ICE guy, right?
Right.
And I think also the tactics and techniques that you use, wrestling up and controlling the border are totally different from what you do in this particular case, right? It was a bad decision to have that guy there, unfortunate. But again, there is no sort of perfect. This stuff is happening in real time, right? And you learn as you go. I think what Trump did was he acted relatively quickly to change the dynamics there, right?
Very quickly.
Very quickly and stuff. So I at the end of the day, was that guy the guy that should have been there? No, but hey, you find that out as you go.
Yeah.
Right. And my thought on it is this. It's not just Trump. You also have Waltz and French Fry, or whatever his name is there, right? They were inciting a lot of this. Stand up for ICE. They're taking people out of our community. They don't belong here. Instead of saying, listen, we're going to cooperate with federal law enforcement, because the state DOC was calling ICE and saying, hey, listen, we have this guy. He's an illegal immigrant. He committed crimes. Come and get him. I've seen that here in the state when I used to work for the prison system. I was at a Supermax. We would have ICE come in on occasion and take people out. The problem is at the county level, or whatever they have for their government system there, is not cooperating with the federal law enforcement. So now you have to bring in these border patrol agents, like you say, are better off at the border. That's what they're trained to do. I don't see anybody, and I don't know what their training is as far as riots or anything like that, but I was on the CERT team in our department here in the state. We train for riots because that's what happens in prisons, crowd control. And there wasn't a lot of that. There was some less lethal stuff being utilized, but you have the rhetoric from the left that these people are all bad, go against the federal law enforcement, which now you're telling people to break federal laws, Chris, like you brought up. And then I think a lot of these people, not only being paid, have no clue what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the wife of good. Why do you have real bullets, right? You have this moron that picked up a flashbang grenade and took off her hand. Like, you're not in a video game. You're not playing Call of Duty here. This is the real world, and there's consequences when you do stupid stuff like that. Like, I've been in rooms where flashbangs have gone off. I've tossed flashbangs. Those things are no joke. They would literally, like this lady found out, tear your hand apart. She's lucky she didn't end up getting killed from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the rhetoric, Michael, you talk so much about the false narratives and so forth, and Waltz, and particularly this mayor, starting to see the police union speak up and saying, we have a job to do. We could be out there. Because didn't you wonder, why didn't the police just say, there's a police action going on? You can't go down there. You can't drive your car down there. You can't go down there. They do it for friggin' parades. They do it for parades, and they can't do it for ICE. So you wonder if the citizens living in those areas have a civil suit against this town and the mayor for nonfeasance, not taking action.
Right. They were told to stand down. That's a great point. I love the analogy of the parades. I never thought of that. That's a great one, Chris.
It just a common sense. We miss K. Carl, and of course he always brings us historical perspective, but people forget, before we had the Constitution, as we were trying to coexist as states, what was it called? The Shays Rebellion. Some like 5,000 people in Massachusetts rebelled and I think said, we're not going to pay federal taxes.
Mm.
And remember, they had to get federal troops to come into Massachusetts and quell the rebellion and say, sorry. So, you've got these states' rights where they, under our structure, states do not have to enforce federal law, but there's a supremacy clause where it says the federal rules prevail. So it just seems to me that someone ought to be pointing out the Republicans getting on message that this is a coordinated effort of the Democrats to find some political leverage somewhere, and they just handed it to them. So now I understand they're going to threaten to shut down the government unless you defund ICE.
But here
we are again, back to
right?
Defund the police.
I think they're funded already from the big beautiful bill to 2029 or something like that, right? So it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, there's another angle to this in Minnesota. Certainly, it's pretty amazing that this just happens to conveniently occur when they're being investigated for $9 billion of fraud.
Right.
And it keeps growing.
And it keeps growing. And as it grows, the mayor and the governor keep insisting that they've got to get out. The feds have to get out. We can do this ourselves.
Yeah. And that's a great point, Mike, because ICE is in other states. They're in Texas. They're in Florida. They're in other states where this nonsense isn't happening. Are
they coming to Connecticut, Aaron?
I saw somebody post something online that they had some.
I wish they'd come here.
They'd be here before you know it. And it's just,
Michael, we have somewhere around 150,000 illegal immigrants.
Wow.
And we have a shortage of housing.
3,500 people mostly unavailable. If the Democrats say don't worry, we'll fix it by spending more of your money.
Right.
To fix the problem we created in the first place.
Oh, geez.
So
it makes you wonder why it's working in other states, but for some reason in Minnesota, it's, the train's off the track. And I think a lot of it, Mike, like you said, has to do with the amount of fraud.
Yep.
And then you have Ilhan Omar, is that her name?
Right? Yeah.
That whole stage thing the other day where the guy was sitting in the front row, gets up, sprays something on her. And then when you watch the video, he kind of like just falls into the arms of the security guy. I'm like, did you just know he was there? Like, I bet you're going to find out that's going to be a whole staged event.
Well, the substance was apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
He's trying to help her lose weight. I don't know.
It does seem a little weird, doesn't it?
Oh,
right.
My goodness.
Totally staged.
Well, after January 6th, I went down to D.C. Not that long after, and everyone forgets, but Pelosi ordered that they put a big fence around the Capitol. I don't know if you ever saw pictures of that.
Oh, yeah.
But holy cow, you talk about a fence. This thing was like 25 feet high.
Wow.
And it's made of this metal construction that you can't get your fingers in. You literally, it's impenetrable. And there were military armored vehicles of the guard, and we're talking Aaron, miles around the Capitol, cutting off streets, a big show of force for nothing but for TV effect, as if they were waiting the next wave of the rebellion. So, I took on, I've done some commenting on the Free Press, which I love, but I don't agree with all their writers. And there's this guy, Jerry Rubenfeld, and I shout him out. He writes great stuff. He's a Yale law professor. But I object to his unprofessorial, unprofessional spin where he'll have a whole article that's legally sound, but he uses some sort of tilted, slanted headlines and things, that just get you. And this idea that Trump they accused him of insurrection, right? Even though he said peacefully, and then they go, oh, well, the mayor and the governor can say whatever they want. Well, I don't know. That sounds a lot like insurrection, fight back. And so it's just amazing, the double standard where they jumped on Trump for, quote, creating an insurrection, putting a fence around. But when it comes to the mayor and the governor, First Amendment rights.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's we can call it a double standard, or we can call it irrational, right? Which is I was just reading something where what was it? It was said that it's that hell is someone who has lost, does not see the good in being rational, right?
Yeah.
And so these people they're just nuts. And with Stephanie being in the city council and what we go through here, we just see you have to sit there and you shake your head, because these people say things that are totally just flat out lies,
Right.
and they expect you to just knuckle under and believe it, right, or go
Yeah.
along with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. Well, Aaron, it just as we're probably getting close to end time, but I would just reflect sort of the audience that this idea of getting underneath the sensational headlines and having family discussions of what does the rule, what does virtue require of all citizens? What do we share in common? And no one asked the question. These are happening on streets. And on those streets are lots of homes. And in those homes are families and kids going to school. I'll bet you not many of them are out on their street protesting.
Right.
So the quiet majority, if you will, should have a family discussion and say, look, it's illegal immigrants. Here's what they're doing. But what could they do better? And on the other side, what duty does the governor owe the people of Minnesota and the mayor to the city of Minneapolis? And are they fulfilling their duty, or are they letting ideology override that? These are rich discussions where we don't have to vilify one side or the other, but just clinically look at it and say, what do we think? So that'd be my hope, that people will use this, not metastasize into further divide, but dig in and look at both sides and say, what's going on here?
Right. Yeah, it's a good point, Chris. And also getting back to the paid protester stuff. Like, we know there's paid protesters there. We've seen it. There was video floating around. I could only find it on, I think it was Instagram Reels or something like that, where they were in a church. There were people there learning how to protest. It was like doing like when I used to teach active shooter stuff when we were in Afghanistan. Like, you had people there acting as ICE agents, others acting as illegal immigrants or invaders, whatever you want to call them. And then you had other people acting as the agitators. And again, people need to just pause for a second and say, okay, is this really the best way of doing this? Or should I just stand on the corner with my sign and my bullhorn where I'm not going to put myself in harm's way? Because at the end of the day, the law enforcement has to go home to their family. And you, the protester, whether you're paid or not, you should be wanting to go home to your family. Yeah. And having these staged things where people are learning how to actively impede federal operations is a huge concern. And now I've heard that, the No Kings people are back, and they're going to have this big no kings, no ICE thing in March, apparently nationwide. So we also need to understand who's funding all this. And we need to start tearing these companies apart and these nonprofits and all these NGOs and everything like that that's funneling this money in there. Because I bet you're going to find a lot of money coming out of Minnesota into some of these organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. They one of the big messages around as these people engage in the training is that they're training because there's an existential threat, right? And so they hype these people up. Some are totally ignorant. The people facilitating it understand exactly what it is that they're doing. They're whipping these people up into what literally is an insane state, such that they are willing to sacrifice their lives for the cause. And the sacrificial nature of what it is that they do then is taken by the media and spent up and used to portray America or Donald Trump or ICE or the government as this awful, evil thing.
And this just made me think of something, Chris and Mike, and then I'll let you guys finish up because we are getting close to our end time. We got about 5 minutes here because, as everybody knows, we try to keep this to a 30-minute show. Where were all these people when Obama was deporting and using ICE to get rid of millions of people? It was okay then, but because it's Trump's administration now, it's not okay. Like, I've been trying ever since this started to figure this out, wrap my head around it, and I just can't make any logical sense.
Yeah.
Like, you had a president who deported 3 million people, not one protest, not one American got shot from a federal officer. Nobody was in the streets protesting, burning down the cities, vandalizing hotel chains. Like,
the police cooperated too.
The police cooperated, and now it's like, hey, let's go burn down the Hilton. Let's go to the Econo Lodge where these guys are trying to get some rest before they go back out and start destroying people's property. Like, you're no longer a protester. You're an anarchist at this point. You just don't care for the rule of law, and you want to cause damage to other people's properties. But I keep going back to Obama, and I'm like, none of this happened. And
Aaron,
it's just, you can't.
You know what the special? You're seeing what you see. You're describing what actually is happening. This whole show was about the idea of the narrative. It has been said that the power of the narrative trumps any facts, right? When you can weave a story, when you can make it about Good being shot, when you can make it about this nurse, like you said, the narrative becomes far more powerful than the facts. And the fact is, this tactic has been used all the way back in the Russian Revolution.
Yep.
So it is performance art, using people as fodder. And this person, again, guys, going to a protest where you plan to assault and battery a federal officer with a weapon is one step away from literally, it's known as sort of cop-induced suicide, where you want to get shot. So this ludicrous set of facts, but it's being twisted in a narrative to serve one political purpose or another.
Well, I will say this, though, with the silver lining, I guess, in all this, the left now support the Second Amendment. So I guess we've got that.
As long as it's their person carrying that.
Exactly.
Yes, how logical.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff make sense. And you're right, guys. Like we try to bring on this show. Hopefully people listen to this, they watch it, and they start to understand that you need to start questioning the narrative and what's coming out of there. Because if you just watch MS Now or MSNBC, whatever they're called, or you just watch OAN or Newsmax or Fox, you're not getting the full picture. You really have to take the blinders off and look at this and kind of be an investigative reporter yourself, because you can't rely on a lot of the stuff you're seeing.
Well, and Aaron and Michael, I would offer for our lovely conservative friends that they might chat, they might communicate, that everyone in Trump's administration doesn't have to start to act like Trump. He's got his own stick of threatening and bombast, and usually backs off, it's his style.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden every person in his administration starts using the same, I've got to out Trump and make outrageous statements, show of force, and create a little drama, I guess he didn't get the message from the boss. That's his role to play, not yours. And I hate to say it, but they upstaged Trump, and not in a good way. I think they hope they could talk big talk, boastful power, but in Minneapolis, of all, so I hope people will go back to doing their jobs that they were hired to do for Trump, and do them in a way that the job requires, with respect to who your boss is and protecting his reputation. I just think these people lost control of what their mission was.
Yeah, I would say to some extent, I agree with that. But as I said a little bit earlier, a lot of these people, all of these people virtually, except for maybe Tom Holman, are in their jobs for the first time. Right. And they're trying, I think, if I'm Kristi Noem, we're always battling against that false narrative. Right.
Yes.
One of the ways that you combat that is get out ahead. Well, maybe this time she got a little bit too far out ahead, but I think these are all very smart people, and they are going to get aligned, and Mr. Trump, of course, will make certain of that, or they won't be there for very long.
Well, and Michael, lesson 101, and Aaron, is you show compassion. This person was a human being whose life is gone. All they had to do was say, this is tragic. We've got to look into what happened here. I would again urge the governor, the mayor to keep people away from ICE operations.
Right.
It's tragic, but show compassion, folks.
Yeah.
They're our fellow citizens. They were misguided and they're wrong, but it doesn't mean losing their life.
Yeah.
Right. And I agree with that, Chris. A little compassion would go a long way.
Yeah.
And people also have to understand the ICE agents are human. They probably don't necessarily want to be in the streets. They'd rather just go to a local correctional facility or county jail, pick the person up, and then bring them and have them deported. Because don't forget, a lot of these people have already had their due process. They just didn't leave the country. Now, on the other hand, you have the story out there, the poor guy who was a naturalized citizen gets picked up by ICE, and then they finally figure out who he is, and then they release him. Listen, stuff like that is going to happen. How many people have gone to jail and they shouldn't have?
Yeah.
Right. Like the system isn't perfect, but it's what we have. And it would work a lot smoother, Chris, like you said, if there was a little compassion.
Yep.
And the local government was like, hey, listen, stay out of their way. Let them do their job. The sooner they're done, the sooner they're out of here.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have, they would have to have a bigger push for what's happening currently. But again, I think it goes full circle back to the fraud, and they're trying to hide that as best they can by causing another issue. The whole, don't look over here, look over there type stuff.
Yeah.
Having compassion, I think, is absolutely the right thing to do. But as we all three know, that the ability to have it is sometimes can be a moment to moment thing, right?
Right.
And when you're faced with like people yelling at you, spitting on you, screaming, and there can be and will likely be times when that, but you got to recover, right? To your point, Chris, and then clean things up. And I think we're seeing that happen.
Right. And that's a good point, Mike. You know, when I was in the prison system here in the state, or even overseas with the military, you see some people where they're pushed to their limit, and you have to put that arm out and say, all right, man, you take off. I'm going to take care of this. Right. Like I've seen officers get feces and urine thrown at them, and they literally want to rip that person through the door. Anybody would, right? Want to rip them through that cell door. All right, take a step back, get out of here. We're going to take care of this. Right. And I do feel bad, for these ICE agents. They would much rather, the ones that I've worked with in the past, come to a county jail or a prison and pick the guy up and go. They don't want to be in the streets. That's not their job. They don't want to be doing crowd control and have water bottles thrown at them and cars being kicked and spit on. I mean, I've been spit on. It's no fun. I've had urine and feces thrown at me. It's no fun. And these poor guys, it's bad all around. There's really no good way to look at this, except that the local government needs to step up and say, okay, ICE is here. Let them get these people out and let's move on. And then hopefully there's some bracelets on a few people for all the fraud. Yeah.
And we're dealing with people in this particular case that actually, we're talking about having compassion, but the people that we just described as throwing feces and kicking out lights in the back of cars and spitting on people, they don't have any compassion, right? And then you have their leadership, the governor and the mayor, having no compassion at all, right? Nope. Who's calling for any of these people calling for, let's have an investigation. Let's see what the results of the investigation are, and then leading forward with some sort of a rational action. No, that's been thrown out the window. So, I give a little grace to the people in the Trump administration, simply because that's a horrible situation to be placed in.
Right. Yep.
Well, guys, thank you.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts, or are we good to end today's show? Thank you for those who are tuning in and watching. I appreciate it. And as always, you can always leave your comments and we'll respond to them live here on the air. But anybody else got anything before we go?
Let's go.
All right. Just remember,
stay woke.
Thanks for joining us on the Liberty Collaborative. If today's episode lit a fire or gave you clarity, share it and be part of the movement.